Look on in. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay.
For those of you watching at home, this stuff smells incredible. Absolutely incredible. There's this path here. Look, I have to come down this on my dog walk. It's just laden with it. The smells are beautiful. Anyway, morning everybody. Hope you're well. Morning Connor, morning Kate. You're both in nice and early. No big news coming, I'm afraid. If you're tuning in for me to say that I'm expecting the retained list or I'm expecting players to come in or something like that, not the case. The reason I've done a live basically is that people are starved at this point of the season of any sort of interaction, aren't they? God, my hair looks terrible. People are starved. I noticed that the Echo I don't even think, sent a reporter to the press conference that that the new manager Mark Kennedy did last week. Every time I click on different sites looking for news, there's nothing, and it just feels a little bit isolated. And I just thought, you know what, it's a beautiful morning. I'm going to force the dog to do more of a walk than he has the last 2 days. Let's have a little bit of a get together and a little bit of a chat. So morning again to Tom Palmer, Lynx, Emily Rourke, Jake Tong, and David Tuplin. Morning all. I think there are a couple of points I was going to address. First of all, lots of chatter about the pitch being taken up, and there was some scaremongering on social media that there'd be no home friendlies because pitch was being ripped up and it looked like it was in such good condition, and why are we doing such crazy stuff and it's a waste of money. And I kind of just wanted to broach that a little bit. First of all, this morning, so just to touch on that, the pitch, the top of the pitch is being taken up. It's part of routine maintenance happening over the summer. The pitch did look incredible on the final game of the season. I think it looked as though it hadn't had a game of football played on it, which was superb, and a credit to the team that look after it. But as somebody pointed out, you wouldn't spend £90,000 on a BMW. Well, no, you wouldn't. But you wouldn't spend £90,000 on a car, and then a year later, when it looked great, go, oh, there's no point in servicing it because it looks good. You get ahead of any potential problem. I think Phil Kime, the former groundsman at the club, who's an incredibly knowledgeable man, was speaking about that you kind of take the top off to de-weed, there's something that birds drop in there apparently, like a worm or something as well. So it has to be done to maintain the pitch and to keep the playing surface as good as it was at the end of last season, at the beginning of this next season. If it's anything like my bloody lawn, dandelions come up everywhere. Oh, pain. But anyway, so that's part of the reason it's been done. I don't know the cost. It may be £90,000. It may not be. That hasn't been confirmed by the club, nor do I believe it will be. And it's not, when people were sort of putting that it's part of the contract that it gets ripped up. It's not a case of writing into the contract, we must do this work, and then the work being utterly pointless. It's part of routine maintenance of a top pitch. And it is a top pitch. And I think it's another reason that we will attract decent loan players next season. And we talk a lot about loan players, and people kind of go, oh, we need our own players. You've got to have, at League One level, you've got to have 3 or 4 decent loans, really decent loans. You've got to have at least one that stands out from the crowd, I think. Good, really, really good teams who don't have the means of the Sunderlands and the Ipswiches want good loan players. They have to, because it's a way to add quality to your playing staff without a massive outlay. So in my opinion, you have to do everything you can to attract some of those players. And that, okay, when I say everything you can, I don't mean spending £10 million on a pitch. But if a player wants to come and play nice football and his club wants him to play that kind of football, that'll be Manchester City, Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool. They're not going to send a player to a long ball team. And if they do, you get what happened a couple of years ago with Arsenal sent 2 lads to Gillingham and they went back, I think, at Christmas. So you need to have the whole setup. And whilst it may look like a lot of money to be spending on the pitch, if it's 90 grand, which I don't know, but for whatever the cost is, if it brings us a Brennan Johnson style player who can impact our team to the tune of, let's say, 10, 12, maybe 15 goal involvements over the course of the season, then that's a decent investment, isn't it? So I think it's just important to make that note. And Ryan Wheeler makes a good point here. Morning, Ryan. The fact other clubs are wanting to bring in the same company to do their pitch is a good sign. It is a good sign. absolutely. I think I'm happy to kind of talk about things when I think that they're wrong, but looking at a pitch and going, that looks in good nick, is like walking past a car and going, that looks in good nick when you're not a mechanic. So I let the club do the things that I don't really understand. Do you know what I mean? Kind of let them get on with that. I'm not a pitch expert, and if somebody like Phil Kime comes on and says that needs doing or that's important for the football club, it's important for a good pitch, then as far as I'm concerned, that's good enough for me because that's expert opinion. And I do listen to expert opinion. I'll even let it shape my own opinion, as should other people. So I think that the pitch thing has been taken out of context a little bit on social media. I think some people said, no friendlies at all. We've got Blackburn Rovers, as I understand it. It may be connected to the Teo deal that they come and play us, but we have played them in the past, I think. Under Danny, did we play them? I seem to think we did, or was it not in the friendly? I know we played them in the cup. I thought we played them in a friendly as well. And thought they had Jordan Rhodes playing for them. Might be wrong. But anyway, it's not high profile friendly as in a Liverpool and Man United, but you don't get that anymore. You don't get the days. I remember back in, I think it was 95 or 96, we had Derby and Villa, I think. Derby had Dean Sturridge playing from, they brought their full first team. It was a big game, Premier League side. You don't get that now. If Liverpool send a team to play Lincoln City in the pre-season, they're going to be under 23s or they're going to be under 18s. Probably wouldn't even get their reserve team. I think sometimes you see they have 2 games in a day. So at least with playing Blackburn, you would expect them to have a relatively strong squad. And of course, we don't know, I think, who's managing them, but it'll be a decent friendly. I won't be there for 2 reasons. Kate said we did play a bit of friendly in 2018. I'm pleased about that. And Andrew Cook said, did we then get Scott Wharton on loan? I think we had a relationship with them around that time. So, yeah, I think we did get Scott Wharton on loan as well. My boot's just broken. It's just come off. Nasty. So, yeah, I think the other friendly's a bizarre one, isn't it? Hartlepool away. I did wonder, is that us sounding them out to loan them a player? I was kind of hoping it might be on the back of us signing the lad they've got called Jamie Sterry, who was at Newcastle. He was a very, very good footballer, but it could just be that we've decided that's the type of game we want to play. So fair enough. So there's 2 friendlies. I don't expect high profile friendlies. I don't expect any huge big clubs to come and play us. We might get another championship club, you don't know. But the point is that at least one of those friendlies will be at home, so the pitch is going to be playable. This isn't a case of digging right down and all that sort of stuff. So interesting. So I also haven't really had a chance to catch up with you, certainly not on a live, since I had the pleasure of speaking to Mark Kennedy last week. And yes, I did brush my hair before I spoke to Mark Kennedy because I didn't want to look like I'd just got up, which I haven't, by the way, but it does look like that. So how did I find Mark? Well, it was a tough day, I think, for him because he had loads of media stuff to do in the morning. Radio Lincolnshire took up a lot of his time. We were due to go on at 11:20. I had to do Zoom. Obviously, I've got a kind of a job that I have to do here, which I couldn't take the time off for. So by the time we got on the Zoom, I think it was about 10 to 12. And do you know what? At that point, you could almost forgive him for if he was a little bit, not tetchy, but you know what I mean? Not quite full answers, because he's done a full morning of media commitments. He's getting towards lunchtime, and then the media team, oh, can you speak to this guy next? He's like, who is it? Oh, it's just a guy who runs like a local website. So you would imagine that it would be very easy not to be dismissive, because you wouldn't expect that at this early point in his career at Lincoln City to be dismissive, but perhaps just to roll out a few stock answers, or to, do you want to mean, just make it kind of a paint by numbers interview. It would have been really easy for him to do that. And I think when I asked the first question, and he was very friendly, nice introductions. When I asked the first question, it was, how are you settling in? And you could tell it's something that he's answered to everybody he's met. It's something that do you know what I mean? He's been around the radio, because it was, I'm happy to be here, etc., etc. So rather than an interview, I think it was important just to try and get him chatting a little bit. And we talked a bit about his coaching career, about what it was specifically that attracted him to Lincoln. And the one thing that I got from Mark that, and I've interviewed a few managers and people over the time, one thing that really stood out was how grateful he was to be given the opportunity. Now, every player says that. Every player will go, it's great to be here, it's nice to be given the opportunity. But a lot of the time you get you ask them why they've chosen you. So you say, you had so Howard John Kindy, you had however many teams after you. Why did you choose Lincoln? And rather than saying because I'm getting weighed in, it'll be, oh, I like the project, blah blah blah. You know what you're going to get. But with Mark Kennedy, there was a feel that I don't know. It was I feel like it was the opportunity, not the money. And I never got that, by the way, with Michael. But with Michael, it was very much he was a respected coach. He'd been linked with other managers' jobs before. Why choose Lincoln? And so the early narrative was very much about, we were. When I say we were lucky to have Michael, I think we were. But the early narrative was based very much around that. And then he was talking up what Lincoln offered him to bring him to Lincoln City. Now, with Mark Kennedy, he talks about what Lincoln offered him very, very much the same as Michael did. And, if two people unconnected start saying the same things, you tend to think, okay, there may be a level of truth in that. So, we do have these positive aspects around the club. But it was really interesting the way that Mark said when I was delighted when I was, I think he said something like allowed to come here, or when it came. I can't remember the exact wording of it, but I really liked that because I got that impression of not this is why I've chosen you, but choosing you was a no-brainer. I'm pleased you've also chosen me. That was kind of the way that I felt that the answer was going, and I like that. And look, that could mean two things. It could mean that actually we've gone below the level that you would expect us when we're bringing in a head coach, or it genuinely means that we've got somebody here, a person here who's talented and humble, and only time will tell. Only time will tell on that one. But I respected that because I felt like my football club were a draw, and I felt that with Michael. I did, because he was a big name. He had managed before. He'd got a great reputation in coaching that we heard plenty about. So I got that. But I think with Mark it was different. What I'm hoping is that his reputation within football, which I've spoken to a few people around the club, I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute, but his reputation around football is significant. You and I might not understand that entirely because we're not into coaching, but that he hasn't been waiting for the right chance, but this is the right chance, and he's grateful to have been given that opportunity, and I like that. People around the club are quite excited. They've said, off the record, one of them told me the other day that football people looking at this will go, oh yeah, that's a good fit. Even though fans looking at it will go, it's a bit out of left field. But Mark's journey has been bringing him to this point, going through the coaching, at bigger clubs, a little bit of experience at smaller clubs, modest playing career. His journey is bringing him to this point. And apparently he's got, there are people in football who will talk him up, the likes of Lee Carsley, England under-21 manager, who he worked with at Man City, the likes of Mick McCarthy, who coached him on his journey. And you look at his early coaching years, I think he was a first coaching first came to him under Peter Taylor. As I understand, he was one of the first managers to potentially broach that with him, and obviously Paul Jewell and Dave Jones, and he's played under some good people. But I liked that. I liked that was humble. As we went on, I found that actually he's quite an engaging individual as well. And Danny Cowley was very engaging, very, very engaging straight away. Michael, once the door was shut and the camera was off, was a great, he would talk constantly, very passionate man. And my worry was that I don't know whether would I see that with Mark? Would it be in his first role? Would I get somebody in front of me who seemed uncertain? But he was incredibly friendly, light-hearted, couple of jokes, called me a stato for reading an interview about him liking Tom and Jerry, and we talked a little bit about tactics, which he was quite open to. Just a kind of an amiable guy. I think this is the manager. This is a manager. I call him a manager, but this is a head coach who we're going to see in lots of selfies. I think he's a head coach who's always going to say things like, the fans were class, 10 out of 10, they spur us on at home. I think he's going to say all sorts of stuff like that. He feels like he's somebody that kind of knows knows him. This is going to sound odd, but he knows himself. He knows always what he needs to do. That was demonstrated by being given a first team coaching job at Ipswich and going, no, I'll go back and start with the kids. I need to start my journey properly, and I need to go through those ranks. And I need to. It's like college or school. You need to start at the bottom and work your way up. And I kind of just get that. Sorry, a fly just went in my mouth. I kind of I got that from him, and I think he's. I mean, Michael was approachable. He was. I'm not trying to hold these two people differently, and it's only very, very early days with Mark. Michael was approachable, and you saw him in selfies and things like that. But he was he was very open in interviews, Michael. But I think he was a very closed man outside of that. I think, the personality side of things, Michael didn't want to bring to the table. He obviously said his cancer scare in the summer, and it was, one interview, and that's kind of it. That's it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I think with Mark, it might be slightly different, and we're hoping to do one of the live podcasts. We did the live podcast, didn't we, with Michael when he first started, 2-3 months after he came to the club. Fingers crossed, we might be able to do something similar with Mark and hopefully get more of a flavour from it. So, yeah, I had good vibes off him early on, and I'm hoping, Clive's a good judge of character. He wouldn't have brought bad character into the club, would he? And for me, it's important. I don't think I'll have. I don't know yet. I might do, but I don't think I'll have the same sort of relationship with Mark as I had with Danny, and that was different because at the time Danny was a non-league manager, and that developed over a period of time. I think, with Mark, there's certainly an air of professionalism about what he does. His answers were very measured. They were very. I think I said in my interview, it was like he'd had the questions already. He hadn't, but it was like he knew the answers that he wanted to give. He was very articulate. There was very little and ahhing. There was very little repetition. There was very little bluster. And for me, that's a mark of an intelligent man. And I like the idea of having somebody like him as manager of the football club. And I kind of thought, Joe, there's lots of precedent. I talked about Mickey Duff and Mark Bonner starting their careers, in coaching, and their first manager's job with Cheltenham and Cambridge, respectively, and they've done very, very well with those. But actually, probably one of the best examples was seen the other night in the playoffs. Nathan Jones. So obviously, Nathan, modest playing career. Just 1 second. We'll go back, boy. Come on then. Let's head back. Modest playing career. But very, very good coach. Kind of went into Luton, first coaching job, had coached a bit at Brighton, and look how he's done. So this idea of going for it's best for you guys. This idea of going for a head coach with little previous management experience probably actually isn't as far out of left field as it looks like. And I think when you look at Mark's experience, and you look at where he's been and what he's done, he had a decent playing career, which I do think helps. Nathan Jones did. He played for Brighton. I think he played for Yeovil. It does help to have played the game. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So I'm quite hopeful. I'll be honest. When I first heard Mark Kennedy, I kind of looked at it and I thought, I don't see this. And I tend to be a little bit reactionary at times. We'll go down this way then. Come on. I tend to be a little bit reactionary at times. I think I kind of had this image in my head that beginning of the end for the football club, and having looked more objectively at it, having spoken to Mark, and I am lucky in that respect that I'm kind of on official media and I get to do that. I do feel in a better position now than I did a week or two ago around Mark Kennedy. Sorry, oddly I can hear voices up here. I don't know where. I mean, look, there's nothing. That's a track. No idea why I can hear people. Sincerely hope it isn't something coming down the track, because that'll screw up the live feed, which I'm almost certain that it is. So what next? So we've got Mark Kennedy in. There's no doubt whatsoever that man is going to be working 7 days a week right now to get the team where they need to be. My understanding is, as the situation with Birmingham has been resolved, that he was probably in his own time looking at the team and that sort of thing. The next thing up, I think people are talking about is the retained list, and look, I never put very much weight behind the retained list, if I'm honest. Certainly not in a season where you've only got a handful of players that are not in contract next season. I think we've got Liam Bridcut, I can think of. He's not in contract next season. A couple of others, tops. There's going to be nothing that comes out of the retained list that's too groundbreaking, unless we get a list of players who are made available for transfer. Now, I know that's kind of Peterborough style. I don't think that's Lincoln City style. I think if players are being circulated for transfer, it's very, very easy to do that without stating it on a retained list. I think if you put it on the retained list like Peterborough do, you're more or less saying that player is now not available, not for selection, not wanted. Now, let's assume, based on last season, the club were to say Hakiba Delican's available for transfer, and they announce that to the fans, and then nobody comes in for him. Where does that leave the player? No way back. And that's one thing I've said in an article this morning. I think that kind of having no way back, that's got to be something that fans don't feel is the case with any player at all. So I would be surprised if the club said such and such are available for transfer. I think that clubs will know who are available for transfer. Agents will know who to their players are available. They'll circulate lists to other clubs. There's no need to do it publicly. I don't think that's our style. So I don't think anybody hoping to see a retained list. Someone's in just the wrong place, isn't it? Hoping to see a retained list going, well, I'm hoping we're going to sell such and such. Or somebody on a Facebook page the other day put Max Sanders is staying. Of course he's fucking staying. He's in contract. What do you think the retained list is going to say? Unless we're negotiating to pay up contracts, but we're not clearing decks. Young players who have come in who may well still have value, we're not going to pay up a contract and let them go. We didn't do it with Zach El-Bazedi, did we? We didn't apparently want Zach El-Bazedi, but we didn't pay up his contract. We sold him to another club for a small profit. So players like Max, potentially Hacks, the worst that would happen with them if we were to let them go is that we would agree a deal with a club because they're still in contract and retain a future interest. And I think that's what happened with Ellis Chapman. So I don't get the clamour. I don't get the kind of, when's the retained list coming out on social media? It'll be out by whatever date it's meant to be. And there won't be an awful lot. We might be saying goodbye to Max Melbourne, almost certainly. Conor McGrandles is probably one point of interest. Conor McGrandles stays at this football club, I will be utterly shocked. And if you'd asked me that in August, I would have said the same thing, because the noises I was hearing was that his partner was back in Scotland. He was waiting. He was lined up to go back to Scotland when he left MK Dons, and what actually happened was we managed to tempt him to the project here. We've had 2 good years out of him. We didn't pay a fee for him. I think he's going to go with our best wishes, and he's been a decent player for the football club. Been a decent player. He was if you vote on the Stacey West thing, then he was your player of the year last year over Johnson and over George Grant. That's how consistent he was towards the end of the season. But I think he will be gone. James Otter says, hasn't Melbourne already said his goodbyes on social media? As I understand, yes. I don't think there's a way back for Max Melbourne at all. I think players under contract, there's got to be. You've got to take stock. It's like a shopkeeper going in. A new shopkeeper going in, you take stock of your inventory, and you may value some of your inventory more than the others, but the inventory that's out of date, he's gone. Do you know what I mean? Max Melbourne is sadly at this football club out of date. Personal thoughts, he's a good League Two player, and maybe a lower end League One player potentially. People said he did well when he came in at the beginning of last season. He did well mentally when he came in at the beginning of last season, because he'd been told he could leave the club, and suddenly he was stuck on the left side of defence. I think actually, if you watch performances, You know, the Wickham goal particularly stands out. I'm not comfortable with that. I think we get a 0-0 draw at Wickham that day if him and Josh Griffiths hadn't kind of slightly messed up between them. And Liam Bridcut, I seem to think, got the blame for that initially for giving the ball away. But you know, I think Max Melbourne he's not a player that I'll go, oh no, it's a shame. You know, best of luck to him and all that. It's Bridcut and McGrandles, isn't it? And if reports, I mean, we've been reported to be looking into Alex Gorin, which I don't think will happen. I think he'll go to Sunderland. But if we're looking for that sort of holding player, that suggests to me at least one of McGrandles and Bridcut are going. We could be looking into that position to bring Bridcut in, but to keep Bridcut, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it'll happen. The only way I think Bridcut stays is if Mark Kennedy were to have him as his assistant head coach, and that's assuming Dave Kerslake goes. Jake Tong's just put Marquis is out of contract too, can't see him renewing. Yeah, do you know what? I don't think about Marquis because remember at the time when it happened, it was described to me as he's basically a loan, but it's not. You know, you're bringing him in for 6 months, or for however many months to kind of help us fight our way out of relegation. But I never imagined John Marquis being a Lincoln City player next season. Didn't imagine it. And I think the outlay that it would take to bring him here probably wouldn't be worth it. He had a decent output, but I don't know. I think I did the sums, and I think his goal involvements per game per 90 minutes was actually fewer, and I might be wrong here, but it was actually fewer, I think, than Hakimi Delican. You know, John went a lot of games where he didn't score goals, and yeah, I think I personally actually think Tom Hopper might disappear as well. So we go. Paul Dixon, Marquis has signed for Charlton, hasn't he? No, he hasn't. A journalist account on Twitter started last month with 4 followers, said that he was at Charlton and put pen to paper. Nothing official has been done yet. It can't be done yet because we haven't announced our retained list. So officially he's still a Lincoln City player, and he can't sign for anyone else until the 1st of June. So he hasn't signed for Charlton. That's a classic example. And Chris Graham, you've seen it as well. He signed for Charlton. It's a classic example of one rogue Twitter site creating a transfer rumour. One of them linked us with James Norwood yesterday. And sorry, Stiggs, no worries. You said you'll get me coat. I'm not. What I'm saying is it's so easy in this day and age to create a false story. I mean, there was the thing with Morgan Rogers and Bournemouth, and had he been recalled by Man City, and so, you know, a hack had gone on and put yes he had, and then he hadn't, and nobody really knows the situation, and social media creates that, and this is the worst time of year for it. It really is. And so if a player who's contracted at Lincoln City is linked with somebody else by a reputable site, I'll report it. And so, you know, if it's an Alan Nixon, and I say reputable, he's a Sun journalist, but do you know what I mean? He's connected to an outlet. Unlike most of the other Sun journalists, he doesn't usually make stuff up. And you've got Peter O'Rourke, he's pretty good. John Percy is pretty good. And you only need to see that Percy and O'Rourke were the first 2 to break the Mike Clapperton news before it became official. They're pretty good when it comes to transfer rumours. EFL Rumours 6 or local journalist 17 who's just started at the new paper and has got a face that hasn't seen a razor 3 times in its life, tend to steer away from a little bit. A classic example, again, I was contacted yesterday by a nice lad, works for the Portsmouth News. We've been linked with Morgan Whittaker. Can I have a chat with you about it and find a little bit about him? So I thought, there must be something in this. Normal News doing it. So I had a chat with him and he said, I just saw us linked with him in a tweet the other day. Now, if they had done the actual story, Morgan Whittaker linked with Portsmouth, what you would have got is people then saying Portsmouth are definitely interested in Morgan Whittaker because it's in their local paper and it's reputable. So sometimes these journalists, these kind of sites even start rumours off and then go and pick them up when a decent source kind of packages them and claims that they're the original source. I should know because I've done it. When I used to work for one of those kind of sites, very good site actually, that's developed a lot over time, and obviously started one of my own, the Real EFL, which I don't do anymore. I'd have a habit of finding a crappy kind of source or something like that, retweeting it, waiting for it to get picked up, even if it was EFL Rumours 1. And as soon as somebody picked it up and printed it or ran with it, you could then go and say, right, I'll get it from there. And there was one, I can't remember who the player was, but it was Crawley. And I ended up getting blocked actually by the account. It was one of these ex-agent accounts, and he had linked somebody with Crawley, a Lincoln player with Crawley. I can't remember who it was. And the Crawley picked it up, and they said, you know, oh, ex-agent, such and such off Twitter. Would never report that it was ex-agent off Twitter in a position like mine, because you look ridiculous. That's like me as Stacey West going on, bloke in the pub says we're signing James Norwood, and putting that linked with James Norwood. Bloke in the pub's not a fucking resource, is he? But Crawley Observer are. So it was easy to spot where the rumours came from, but as soon as a positive thing picked it up, you could go with it. So if the Morgan Whittaker one, for instance, had gone to the Portsmouth News, somebody like me could quite easily have gone Portsmouth News, a link in Portsmouth with Morgan Whittaker. So it's interesting. It's an interesting industry. Look, I think there's so much that end users don't understand about that reporting industry. So much, and the longer you kind of, when I say work it, I mean I'm not a football journalist, but the longer that you're around it and you're sourcing stories and you understand how news now works and stuff like that, you know, it's easy to pick up what's reputable and what's not. That's why the Michael Carrick story last week looked reputable. It did, because it came from Football Insider, who used to be Pete O'Rourke, now Wayne Vasey, who I'm not as sure about, but it looked like a reasonable outlet. But remember, agents use these as well. So for instance, Michael Carrick's agent might have gone, the Lincoln job's available, we want Hibernian and Blackburn to think that he's looking for a job, so we link him with the Lincoln job. We'll put it out through Football Insider, and actually there's no contact at all. And my understanding is that we didn't hold any sort of discussions whatsoever on with Michael Carrick at all. Right, you know what? It's so warm out here. I've been wanting to take my hoodie off for about the last 15 minutes, but I've been chatting to you. You know, it was only a quick catch up, and we're 33 minutes in, and we're talking about reputable football journalism, which I'm not quite sure how it happens, to be honest. I'm not really sure where these chats go, but it is nice, and I appreciate everybody who joined. I'll just pick up any comments. I mean, there are not as many, and you must forgive me because I can't see the sunshine, possibly trip to Lincoln to play Riddim's Gibraltar, Andy Bull. Doubt it, Adam Bull rather. Sorry, mate. Doubt it, but you know, if it is, I'll go cover it if the club want me to. Nigel, hi mate. So Harry Toffolo versus Brennan Johnson. Who wins? Love Johnson, but if Toff goes up, then we'll get a few quid. So I'm supporting Huddersfield over Forest. I'd be amazed if Brennan wasn't playing in the Prem next season. Yeah, I mean, for Lincoln fans, it's double interest, isn't it? I want to see Forest in the Premier League more than Huddersfield, because I still don't like Huddersfield, because they took the Cowleys from us and they took Toff from us. And I kind of, with Forest, it's like, well, they loaned us Brennan Johnson, and his form this season has been superb. And believe me, I think we'll see more benefit from Brennan Johnson's loan at Lincoln this summer than we did last summer. Because last summer we'd loaned Brennan Johnson. He played relatively well for us all season, but nobody knew how he was going to do when he goes back to Forest. He's gone back to Forest and smashed the arse out of it. So actually, clubs might go, well, hang on, they loaned him at Lincoln 2 seasons ago, did really well at Lincoln, came back and did really well here. Lincoln's the place to send my exciting winger. Or our exciting winger. So we could see the benefits of Brennan Johnson if they go up, but not financial. And as I understand it, the club have got a financial interest in Harry Toffolo being promoted to the Premier League. And so for that and that alone, I've got to say Huddersfield, even though I desperately want Forest to go up. So there we go. Just a few comments about Mark Kennedy. I think that's about it, to be honest. Kate Jack says Melbourne's not like Matt Bloomer. He's a decent utility player, but not the type to drive forward with. Yeah, do you know what? I was never a Bloomer fan. And he never let the club down. He didn't, Matt Bloomer, apart from Wickham, where Nathan Tyson literally just owned him. The first half hat trick, I think, brought Bloomer off at half time and it ended up 3-2. One of his last games for the club. He did. The fact that we got to the playoffs so many seasons with Matt Bloomer as a key squad player shows that that team was better than the sum of its parts. And I think that was always said. And you look at the likes of Ben Sedgemore as well, not fantastic footballers, but they fit into an ethos, and Bloomer was a worker. I don't think Bloomer made as many errors during his time at the club as I feel that Melbourne perhaps has. But Max will do well. He'll do well in League Two, I hope. He would suit, Charlie, leave it. He would suit, like a Stevenage where he went on loan or somebody like that who are looking. Walsall might be interested now. He's on a free transfer. He did well for them when he went on loan. Decent player, but not for us. So, look, 36 minutes in. I'm going to have to go do some actual work. I have got a haircut booked in. You'll all be pleased to know. Before I go on holiday in a couple of weeks, if anything happens, retain list, anything like that, she'll let you know. Personally, I'm not expecting anything this week. Just I know one or two people at the club not in this week. I'm not expecting any big news or any big developments. Cue transfer news. I wouldn't expect any major signing news, if I'm honest, until the bank holiday weekend, June the 1st. It's happening. Stuff's happening. My understanding is Mark Kennedy's met players, talking recruitment, looking at timescales, but we won't know about it. And the less we know, the better. I thought the club did a great job of keeping Mark Kennedy under wraps. Brilliant job. Never usually happens. Always it gets out, but not this time. And it's better. Not for me. Don't have anything to write about. Not for you. You don't have anything to be excited about. But just from a player point of view. If nobody had known that we were interested in Trey Hume, okay, his agent might have spread it about. But who knows? He might have ended up here rather than at Sunderland. So best just we'll sit tight, enjoy the nice weather. Don't worry about the football. Stuff's happening. It's like night and day. You might not be hearing you might not get a message telling you the sun will rise at 7 in the morning, but it will. And the same with the retain list. You might not know when it's coming out, but it will come out. Just keep calm. Keep calm. Carry on. Enjoy the sun. See you soon.